everyone. So one of my reading goals for this year, which is kind of a one that's continuing in from last year, is to try and read more books this year. Last year I read about 24, 25 books, which was higher for me than it had been in a couple of years. So I'm hoping to continue onwards and upwards with that and be able to read even more, and also again get through more on my TBR, so then ones I don't like I can get rid of and make room for new ones that I do like. Last year I kind of had a goal that I tried to stick to of 2 books a month. I felt like that just made it feel a lot more manageable than a kind of huge number for the year. And now we're only in the 3rd month of the year, I understand that, but I am trying to kind of hang on to that 2 books a month thing as like a base minimum. So in January I read 3 books, but in February I was lucky enough to read 5 books. And not only was it 5 books, but it was 5 great books. So I really wanted to make a video discussing them, talking about them, seeing what other books you guys liked, or if you read these and what you thought about them. So yeah, let's get into it. So the first book I read this month is actually an arc for a book that doesn't come out until April, and that is Murder by Cheesecake, which is a Golden Girls cozy mystery. I was so excited to find this one. I had no idea that it was coming out. I love the Golden Girls so much, and I didn't realize that this year in particular is going to be the 40th anniversary of the show, so there's a bunch of like new promotions and stuff coming out with that. This is the first book in I believe a series that's going to be started, which is awesome. I don't read like too many cozy murder mysteries, but I really love this one, and I feel like the author really nailed the tone of not only the Golden Girls episodes, but like each character itself. This one particularly is about Rose. She has her family from St. Olaf that's coming to Miami for a wedding. So she is trying to plan this wedding and show that like she still can honor the St. Olaf traditions and all that, while also trying to please the groom's family who wants a more like modern traditional wedding. While that is all happening, Dorothy's date that she had just met ends up being found dead in the freezer. So there's suspicion on Dorothy for that, and she's trying to clear her name. The girls are trying to help her clear her name while also trying to help Rose pull off this wedding and make it this big hurrah. It's definitely more focused on, I would say, Rose and Dorothy, since the 2 main storylines are focused on them. However, I hope that in future books we could get one that's more focused on like Blanche or Sophia, or just kind of take turns with who like the mystery is actually about, or who the main book is about. I just really think that they nailed the voice of the characters. You feel like you're watching like an extended Golden Girls episode, and it's really exciting and promising for like what else is to come in the future, and I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. After that, I read a book that was actually picked up for a book club on Parlor, and that is Small Things Like These. I probably never would have picked this up had it not been in my book club. It's a short, I don't know like if it qualifies as a short story, but it's definitely shorter than what I usually read for books. It's only like 100 and something pages. It's about this guy who is living in Ireland during the times of when they had those houses where they would just kind of send like women or young girls that they didn't think like fit into society, right? Like the troubled girls and all that, and put them to work. I had heard briefly about these in like college. I learned about them, but I didn't know full about them. So it is a fiction book, but based on something like real in life. And he ends up delivering he's like a lumber master, and he ends up delivering some wood to the place where these girls are staying, and he ends up finding one girl who's stuck in a shed in like the middle of the night, freezing, has clearly been there for a lot of days, and the book is about him struggling with knowing what he should do with that information, because the people who run this place are very powerful in his town, and it's also not a great time in his town where it's very hard to find work. He's got kids and a family, so it's that kind of grappling of faith and doing the right thing versus everyone else telling you to just ignore it, and what could be right is maybe the harder thing to do, but the easy thing is not the right thing. So I really liked it. Again, it's not something I would ever pick up, and I don't think I'm super big into shorter stories because I get the impact of ending it where it ended, but I also feel like it kind of ended just as I really started to get interested in it and like wanted to see the outcome of the decisions that were made. And again, I get that that was very intentional and very impactful, that like ending it kind of not knowing what's happening, but I just feel like I definitely could have read even more of it to see the outcomes of everything, people's reaction to it and all that. It is a movie with Cillian Murphy that I also want to check out, because I wonder how that'll expand upon it, since it is such a short book, but I really, really liked it. And again, it's something I don't know if I'd go back and reread it just because it's very like heavy and just not something I usually read, but it was extremely well written and very informative, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I read another book that's not coming out until June. This book is another one that I don't think I'd really read. I'm really trying this year also to expand like my reading variety and not just stick to like romance or anything, because I think even though I read a lot of good romance books last year, it can get kind of repetitive, and I want to just read different things than kind of 1 or 2 genres. So this one is one. It is billed as Big Little Lies meets Tiger King, which is just the most wild description of a book I think you could ever give, and clearly I was drawn in from the minute I saw not only that description, but the cover being a very like intentional kind of claw with like the women's nails. Like you very much get the idea of what it is. The backstory of this is that it's about 3 different women who live in this very affluent neighborhood, and at the start of the novel, one of the women's husbands alleges that he sees a panther in their like suburban neighborhood, and that kind of kickstarts the whole thing of like all these lies, all these manipulations, all that kind of, again, like Leanne Moriarty stuff you see happening with the backdrop of, is this cat here, is this cat not here? So we've got our 3 main characters who are all kind of using the idea of maybe this cat being here to further their own goals. What I really, really liked about it is for the first like 100 pages, I was not into it at all. Like I thought the story was very much like women just hating women and like talking bad about women behind their backs while smiling to their faces, and I was like, oh, this is annoying. There's 3 main point of views. Like I said, the 3 girls, I only liked one of them. The other 2, I hated one of them, and then the other one was just kind of there for me. I didn't really like her. What's masterful about this book though is about halfway through, when plot twists start coming out and information starts getting revealed, it throws the entire thing on its head, and the characters that I loved, you realize are the villains. The characters that I hated, I ended up really loving and being in awe of the choices that they made, and I just think to be able to pull that off so well, and so where like, I don't know, it's always impressive when it's like you write a book. And I feel like sometimes you write a book or you tell a story and you, as the person reading it or viewing it, can tell that you're being misled to feel a certain way about someone, right? I feel like that's a lot of times when we see with like movies where you're trying to figure out a suspect. You're like, they're trying to make it too obvious that this is this person. Clearly it's not, and that's what makes you write them off. I think it's very masterful that this author was able to do that in a way, but not making me realize it. You know what I mean? Like reading it and being like, well, I hate this character, and then realizing you're supposed to have hated that character and you're supposed to have felt for that character up until the moment that you've been duped just like everyone else. So I think that was so wonderfully written because I did not see it coming at all. I think for the journey I went on of being like, this book isn't that great, to then being like, this book is amazing, that alone deserves a standing ovation. But I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm so excited to see when it comes out other people's reaction to it, because like I said, it's just such a visceral of like, I don't like this one, this isn't for me, I only like this one character, to oh my gosh, what is happening, I can't put this book down. So I really loved it, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I read The House of My Mother by Shari Frankie. This is the eldest daughter of Ruby Frankie, who was arrested, I believe 2 years ago, for abusing her children along with this like person she had been working with. I personally didn't watch their channel when they were on YouTube, but I had obviously heard about the story of everything that happened and what came out with them, and I just thought it was it's a very timely story, especially with how like social media is and family vlogging and all that. So I wanted to read her story, I guess because also it's like there's so much talking about this family and all that and speculation. So I felt like if I was gonna be invested in the story at all, I wanted to hear from someone telling it on their own terms, you know, and being like, this is, so much of her life has been documented, but this is her taking her moment to tell you, and then kind of being like, now I disappear, you know, like I've said it all, now I'm done, just let me go live my life. Now what I will say is there is so much more to the story and her life than just what happened to her. Like there is so many things outside of like her mom getting arrested for child abuse that really all culminate, and you see like this life she lives. And I think she's a very, very good writer and very introspective, which I think you see, and she even admits it, like made her life harder growing up, kind of just overthinking things. It's a very nice journey of someone, seeing someone heal, you know, seeing someone realize that what they went through is not fair and not right, and it's not their fault, and there's a lot of healing that has to be done with that, a lot of grief and things that like you're losing but you'll never get back, or things that you never had and you can wish you had those, but it doesn't change the fact that you never had them. And I just think hearing it from her, it definitely makes you feel like, I think it opens the world of like family vlogging and all that, and how it is kind of the idea of like your family also being your business is very, that can get really tricky, and that's one aspect of it. But then there's also the idea of like just her mother in general and like the abuse she gave these kids, and it really is like reading, I mean, it's chilling some of the stuff that happened to them, and reading like just how brainwashed and ostracized everyone was. And even Shari, who is a very smart girl, how she was just not able to do anything because systems failed her and her siblings. And I just think it was really, really eye-opening, very well written, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Last up this month, my boy came in clutch for me, and I ended up reading Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green, The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection. My friend for years has had like a joke about how she's like, John Green is obsessed with tuberculosis. And I'm like, okay. Like, I never really know it, but she's always just like, that's her thing. Like, if John Green is obsessed with tuberculosis, my friend is obsessed with John Green being obsessed with tuberculosis, and I just think this is hysterical. So when I saw this book was coming out, I wanted to read it, but I also like was a little because I feel like I can be a germaphobe, so I didn't know how reading something like this would feel with me. But my gosh, was it again eye-opening. He does a really good job of interweaving the story between this boy who's his friend Henry that he meets, who is suffering from tuberculosis, while also going over the history of tuberculosis and how we view the disease, how its name and everything has changed, and how it really is a disease of society, and how there's just so much you can do to make this better that the world simply hasn't, because it hasn't affected them. And I think it's very angering. It's very, very, there's a part where I just ended up sobbing, because there's a part where they're talking about Henry, who's been getting these treatments that don't work and has just been, you know, trying and been positive and all that. And there's a part where he says like he just wants to go to school. And I just broke down at that part, because it's just the idea of like something that I think so many people take for granted. And how many kids do you hear being like, I don't want to go to school, I want to stay home from school, right? And here's this kid who is so sick he can't even go to school, and that's all he wants, is just to be in school, be around people. And it just like it just broke my heart. This book it's hard, but it's very, very informative. And again, John Green does an amazing job of weaving those ideas of like someone and making it personal of someone's one particular story, while also showing the history of it and showing how, you know, when everyone was kind of suffering from tuberculosis, there was that idea of like consumption, of how it was a disease of like poets and the wasting disease, and it was almost romanticized in a way. But then as soon as they were able to cure it for rich, elite, white people, it all of a sudden became this disease of something's wrong with you morally, like you've done something to deserve this. And the idea of being this like tortured poet that is suffering from this disease no longer existed, and nothing changed about the disease. Like, it didn't do anything new or anything. The only thing that changed was how we were able to treat it, so who would catch it changed, and then that changes how people view it. And it's just all that stuff about like the racial aspects of it, the stigma of it, and how that has changed based on who it affects and everything. How we have a cure for I mean, he says multiple times in this book that the problem is the cure is not where the disease is, and the disease is not where the cure is. And there's just something so wrong about that. Like, reading it, you see like how this is something of, if you ignore it just because it doesn't affect you, like that's not going to help anything. And it was just so eye-opening, so like hard to read. Like I said, sobbed, but so informative, and I think worth it. So I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, all these books I read this month were really, really good. Like, I'm really happy to say that none of them were disappointing. The ones that I thought were going to be good were great. The ones that I thought were going to be bad were way better than I thought. So I think it was a really great month for reading, and I would love to hear what you guys read this month in February and what you're looking forward to in the coming months, because March is going to be Hunger Games, the new Hunger Games book, which I'm so looking forward to. And yeah, just let me know what you read this month, if you liked it, if you loved it, if you read any of these books or heard of them or interested interested in them and what you're looking forward to reading in this month and what's coming out. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye!